friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I've got a cute card for you guys using the adorable new Manatee-rific stamp set that was just released. Love these little guys. I'm also using the new You Are Sublime stamp set, just a few accessories from there, and then a few more accessories from Party Animals because I wanted to make a birthday card today. So I've stamped my images on some Copic friendly cardstock with Memento Tuxedo black ink, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers today. I wanted to do something a little fun and different rather than the traditional gray for the manatee, so I'm actually using some purples. I am using the 99s though, so they do have a very dull color to them, or it's almost like a grayish purple, so it's not too out there, but just a little different. So I'm starting with that V99 and laying in my shadows, just kind of accentuating the different shapes of his body. So a little bit around his muzzle to help it protrude out a little bit, some on his flippers, and on his belly where his flippers are kind of overlapping, there would be a shadow cast. And then I'm also doing it around the outer edge of his tail and along his back, just to give him that rounded appearance and help him kind of lift off the page. And then I'm going to blend all of that out with the V95, just carrying that color a little bit in towards the center, and then bringing in the V93 and carrying that out even further. At first I just wanted to really soften up the edge of the V95 and make sure I have a really nice transition with my blend. But once I have that, I'm going to carry that out even further, still leaving though plenty of room for that V91, so I have a nice highlight on his face and down the center portion of his body. And that's really going to help him look nice and chubby too, to have that dark around the outside edges and the light in the center. Once I have that all filled in, I'm going to go back with my darkest color, that V99, and I'm going to add a little dot detail here and there just to give him a little more personality, give his skin a little more texture, just sticking mainly to the areas where it has the darkest shadow, and then gave him a couple little dots on the side of his muzzle there. And then I'm going to go right over that darkest with that V95, just adding a few more dots here and there, and also overlapping some of the V99 to just help it get knocked back into the background a little bit. And I'm just going to build that up all the way down to the V93, and then I'll just let that dry, and those colors will kind of fade into the background as the color kind of absorbs into the paper. While I have those markers out, I'm going to color in some of my accessories. I'll do some of the dots and stripes on the different party hats, and the bow on the gift, and the shells. I wanted to restrict myself to a very limited color palette for this card. I just thought sometimes it's fun. I like a challenge to use minimal markers and minimal color palette and kind of stick to that and see what you can do, especially then when you find that you have something that you maybe want to color with a more natural color like the rock, but you've kind of cut that color out of your palette, so what do? You have to improvise, and it can be kind of fun, the results. So the next color I'm introducing into my palette is an aqua. I'm using BG45 and BG49 for the fish. So I'm starting at the bottom with the BG49 and then blending upward. There are only two colors in this particular color family, so I am going to go back over that again and kind of just add another layer and create some more depth and dimension with just those two markers. And then I will again color in some of the accessories as well, just doing a few of the stripes on the party hats and some dots and the gift. So I'm doing the BG49 down at the bottom where I would have a shadow, and then blending upward with the BG45, and again just adding that second layer to create a little more depth with those two markers. I wanted to continue with the aqua, but I wanted a lighter shade of it, so I'm bringing in the BG11, BG13, and BG15, and I'm going to start with my balloon. I'm using the BG15 to do kind of a half moon shape on the left side of the balloon, and then I'm blending on either side of that with the BG13, and then I'll use the BG11 for the rest. I kept kind of a rim light on the left hand side there, and then I'm bringing that all the way on the right hand side, but I am going to leave a little sliver of white for a highlight. Even though it's under the water, I'm still doing a light source as if it were above ground. I mean, there most likely wouldn't be a manatee wearing a party hat holding a balloon under the water either, but you know, we take some artistic liberty with our cards. So anyway, I'm just continuing to blend that balloon. I was having a little trouble getting the BG13 and BG11 to cooperate, so I just did a little tip-to-tip action to kind of create another shade there to help that transition. Then I'll also color in the background of the polka dot party hat with the BG11. And here is where I decided that I was going to color that rock with these colors as well, but that's fine. Maybe it's a piece of, you know, sea glass down at the bottom of the ocean. So I just used the BG11, BG13, and BG15 again for that. The last color palette that I'm introducing is green, and I'm using YG05, YG07, and YG09. Starting with the YG09 on my grasses and coloring darkest to lightest, and then went back in with the YG09 to add just a few flicks of that darker color for some contrast. This next one I'm using the YG05 first, and I also used that for the stripes and remaining polka dots on my party hat. And then I'm going to come in with that YG07 and add just a little dot of color, and then an even smaller dot of the YG09. I'm also going to use those same three shades to color in the face and top fin of my fish. And I also did add a little dot detail to add a subtle scale effect on the fish, but I did that off camera. And now I'll just trim these out with the matching dies. For my background, I'm using 3 shades of Distress ink. I'm using Twisted Citron, Peacock Feathers, and Seedless Preserves. I knew I wanted to create almost a glowing center that gets darker and darker as it moves out. So I'm starting with that Twisted Citron and sponging that on in the very center of the card in kind of an oval pattern. Then I'm going to come in with that Peacock Feathers and go right around the outside edge of that. I am using Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock. It has a vellum coating that makes it really easy to blend on. So I'm just going to continue that oval shape right around the Twisted Citron, trying to get the edges of that to blend. And I'll just go back and forth between those two colors until it's building up to a look that I like. Then I'll come in with the Seedless Preserves as my last shade, and that's going to go right around the outside edge. And as you can see, it looks pretty sloppy right now, but because it's on that vellum coating surface, I'm going to be able to blend that in no problem. So I grabbed a piece of Post-it note paper just to kind of hold the piece of cardstock down so that I don't get my fingers in it. It'll leave fingerprints behind where they'll kind of lift the ink up away from the cardstock. So I'm just holding that down in place so that I can hang on to it while I do all those edges. And it's going to look like a mess at first, but the key with Distress inks is to just keep building and blending, to keep laying down those colors. So I'm going to continue to go back and forth with all 3 of those shades until I'm completely happy with the entire background and until I have a really nice blend. Then I'll take my Tim Holtz Distress Sprayer and give that a good few spritzes of water. I want to have some different size droplets to get some nice effects. And then after leaving that for a couple of seconds, I'll just blot that with a paper towel. And I'll go back and forth once again until I get a look that I'm happy with. Once that panel has dried completely, I'm going to pop it in my MISTI and stamp my sentiment. I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black ink to stamp a sentiment from that Manatee-rific stamp set, and it says, "Let's Celebrate." And I'm going to stamp that down twice to get a nice bold impression. While I have my MISTI out, I'm going to stamp the inside of my card as well. I'm using Lawn Fawn Juice Box ink to stamp the other manatee and the little trio of bubbles and the sentiment that says, "Have a Manatee-rific day." To assemble my card, I'm going to adhere my focal panel to the card front with some liquid glue. I'm just going to line that up nice and straight so it covers the complete card front. And that is an A2 standard size card. So it's 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall. Then I'm taking the brand new Lawn Fawn stitched scallop rectangle frames, and I've used the second largest to cut that out of some white cardstock. I'm popping that up in the center of my card with some thin strips of foam tape, and that's just going to add some focus to our scene. I've added more foam tape to the back of most of my images, and I'm going to start with the manatee and the balloon because those are my central images, and I want to make sure that I have them spaced just right so that the balloon does not touch the top of the frame and the manatee's tail does not touch the sentiment, but kind of just frames those up nicely. And then I'll add the little fish right across from him. I've added some foam tape to the top of my party hats, but kept the bottom without so that it can layer nicely over my critters. And I'm just using a little liquid glue for that part, so I can get them just perfectly flush with the rest of the images. And now that I have my main images set on the card, I can begin to add in my little accent pieces. So I'm adding in the grasses and the seaweed. I'll bring in that stone and just tuck the bottom edge under the frame there. And then to balance that out, I'll add the birthday gift over on the left side. I'll use a little liquid glue to add a shell on the right, since it is kind of popped up by all the other elements there. It didn't need some foam tape. And then I added just a little sliver of foam tape to the back of the remaining shell and used some liquid glue for the rest, since it will kind of overlap that wider gap over on the left there. To finish off the card, I'm going to take some 4 and 6 millimeter Pretty Pink Posh clear droplets, and I'm going to add a few of those to my card. And those are just going to mimic some water bubbles, and they're not much higher than the popped up elements on the card, so they don't add too much more bulk. So you could probably send this card through the mail if you wanted. You might need a padded mailer for it. I'm going to end up hand delivering this one because it's for my sister-in-law who swam with manatees a couple years ago and really loved the experience. So I think this card is going to be perfect for her. I wanted to add a little sparkle, so I'm going to bring in some crystal stickles and add it here and there on a few little places on the card. I did it on both of the shells and on the seaweed and a little bit on the grasses, a tiny bit on the stone and the ribbon on the gift. I also added a little bit to either side of the party hats and to the balloon. So I'll just add a really nice bit of shimmer when she picks it up and holds it into the light. So that is going to complete our card for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know this was kind of an unusual color palette and kind of a challenge to stick to just the 3 shades, but I think it came out pretty cute, and I think my sister-in-law is going to love it. So hopefully you guys do too. If you did enjoy the video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would love to have your support. It really means the world. And if you want to make sure that my videos always end up in your feed, just go ahead and click on that little notification bell. Here's 2 extra videos that I thought you might also be interested in, so hopefully those will tide you over until my next one. Until then, I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.